Happy Thursday. It is Therapy Thursday. How are you? I am Dr. Triffy. Come on into the room. Every Thursday, I show up for a Transforming Trauma podcast. I am excited and looking forward to tonight's session because it is going to help me and I hope a lot of you tonight. So, tonight's topic is anticipatory grief. Before I start talking about that, I want you to remember who I am. I'm here every Thursday, but my name is Dr. Triffy Margaret Wallace. I'm a licensed psychologist in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm also a licensed professional counselor in Georgia and an advanced clinical hypnotherapist. I like to tell people that the work I do uh, is not, you'll meet people in an elevator and they ask you, what is the work that you do? And I say, I'm a psychologist. And they say, do you read minds? I'm like, no, I'm not a psychic. I heal broken hearts. Yes. So I believe it is important to learn how to think better so you can feel better and do better. And many of the skills that I teach, many of the topics that I cover on Transforming Trauma podcast, many of these topics are geared towards teaching us, helping us, reminding us how to do that so we can create a more meaningful, a more pleasant, a more enjoyable experience of this life that we're all living. So, what is anticipatory grief? Let me start off like this, right? I became, I think, an accidental grief expert. Grief is not my favorite subject to teach about or to talk about, but life has its way of bringing things to you that you can't avoid. And so at 21, I lost my mother very suddenly in a really tragic way and spent maybe the next 14 to 16 years recovering. Surviving grief is what I call it. Surviving. And then life gave me a bit of a break. And then last year decided, okay, you've had enough of a break when it comes to losing loved ones at least. And last Mother's Day, my ex-husband and the father of my children died suddenly on that Mother's Day of 2021. And then life was like, I'm not done with you yet, I'm not done with you yet. There's a little bit more coming. And in December of last year, my fiance died suddenly. And so this year, I have spent much of the year surviving the grief recovery process. And as I come upon the first anniversary of my fiance's death, which is December 5th, I have found myself ugh, anticipating the anniversary. And I thought to myself, this might be a topic to do a little bit more research on myself so I can remember some strategies to help me think better so I might be able to feel better and do better as that gets closer. And perhaps I can help some other person who is experiencing grief or who is anticipating grief. And as we talk tonight, you might realize, hey, I might be one of those people who's been dreading, anticipating grief. So let's start. What is anticipatory grief? Anticipatory grief occurs in anticipation as you think ahead towards, I'm not going to say look forward to, but it's a matter of looking forward, looking ahead towards a situation that includes death or loss. Okay? And it's a way of preparing yourself to grieve, so to speak, for an event that hasn't yet occurred. So, you, as the individual who is going through an experience, might be feeling that level of preparation, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Or it could be loved ones who are looking at you having an experience who are anticipating grief in relation to you or loss in relation to you. So, I want you to think of a few scenarios, right? Let's suppose you have a relative who gets diagnosed with cancer. Let's suppose you have a relative who gets diagnosed with Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's disease. Now, this person, your parent who you love and know, and who loves you and knows you, you start realizing, I'm going to start losing this person bit by bit, day by day, month by month. And so our mind starts to generate thoughts about that event and how we might do, what it might feel like for us. And many of us start grieving that upcoming event that we haven't seen yet. So, as I said, it might affect the caregiver, it might affect the actual person who's going through the experience, say, of a terminal illness. And the effects are overwhelming, just as overwhelming. Let's suppose you are caring for a child who's got a chronic disease. And although there's no, say, a timeline, no doctor has said, well, your child has 6 months to live. Perhaps it's just one of those situations where you're not sure, but you know that child is always in the hospital and it's always touch and go. Sometimes you might get a break, but somebody somewhere might have said, well, that child of yours, whom you love so much, might not make it to 50. And so you, as the caregiver, as the parent, as the sibling, you look forward at the potential event. Let me give you another example. Let's suppose you are diagnosed with a condition and you're awaiting a lung transplant or a heart transplant or a liver transplant, and you have no idea when or if you might get that organ. And even if you do get that organ, you worry perhaps that the person from whom you will get that organ has to die first before you can get that organ. And so many people in that situation grieve in anticipation. Well, what if I die before that happens? And the family also grieves with them. And you might also grieve for the family of that person whose organ you might end up having to receive. Here's another example: amputation. So you might grieve losing body parts. For those people who say have been diagnosed with breast cancer and you have to contemplate losing your breasts to save the rest of your body. And once that happens, and as you look forward, as you look ahead towards that event, there's a lot of grief about, say, losing your identity. Who am I now if I don't have both of my legs? Who am I now if as a woman, I don't have my breasts anymore? Here's another example. Let's suppose you have a pet that is not doing well, or your pet is getting older in age, and every month these days you're at the vet, and based on what the vet says, that your baby is going downhill, and you start preparing for that. So this year, this spring, I was forced to run home to Dominica. I'm from Dominica in the Caribbean originally. I practice in Georgia. I'm licensed in the state of Georgia. And my stepdad, got very ill. And I said, do you want me to come home? Is it that bad? Do you think you're going to make it? And he said, I don't know if I'm going to make it. Please come home. So I rushed home. And from Atlanta to Dominica, what do you think I'm thinking about? That's called anticipatory grief. And now, even as he has gotten better, he's older. And what do you think I think about a lot? Anticipatory grief. Yeah, is what that's called. Think about those people who perhaps you are pregnant and you know or you sense you might not be able to keep this baby and that you're probably going to have to abort the baby. Anticipatory grief. As you consider, what will I do? How will I feel when this event occurs? The research shows that the younger you are, the more likely you're to experience anticipatory grief, especially when it comes to, you know, death. Because even if you can, as you consider, say, a person's family and the relatives, the younger a person is, it's almost as if we are like, oh my goodness, this person has not even had an opportunity to live their life yet. And I can foresee that they're going to live not as long as I had hoped, or not as long as I wished. I think about anticipatory grief perhaps for those people who have relatives who are very addicted to substances, and you see them and the way they're going, you're not sure how long they'll make it. Or perhaps you have that child who is engaging in all sorts of behaviors, and you worry somebody's going to really hurt that child, or they're going to end up in prison, in jail, and be lost to you. And there's no way you can figure out a solution to help that situation turn out in a different way. So these are examples of when we can experience anticipatory grief. It's almost like you sense, sometimes you do know that this is a terminal situation and you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. And you live your life now in that state of waiting, anticipating, and you start the suffering process even before the event has occurred. So, what might you feel when you're experiencing that kind of grief of an event that has not yet happened? Very similar symptoms to what you feel and experience, say, if somebody you love has died or your pet has died already. So, expect anger or irritability, sadness, anxiety, anxiety. Yeah, worry, fear about the future, sadness, depression, depressed mood, appetite problems, sleep problems, every possible symptom that you can connect to grieving a loss that has already happened, one can anticipate. You can anticipate that with anticipatory grief. Okay, so what can you do? What can you do? Well, you do what therapists like me suggest: talk to someone, talk about it, talk about it. Y'all, one of the reasons I have really tried to share my own experience this year is because as a therapist, I understand the importance of talking about it. Not just for me, but it's for other people too. It's for other people too. And clearly, I'm a clinician of color. And so in our communities, many people, more often than not, have a lot of hesitation towards saying yes to therapeutic support. And so part of what I've tried to do and that I want to continue to do is to encourage people who look like me, Black, Indigenous, people of color, people who have a history of being underserved in the mental health system, or people who have negative histories with mental health systems, and you know culturally might have negative experiences or attitudes and ideas about reaching out for help. My intention is to encourage you to talk about it, to speak to a professional about it. If you have insurance, many of your insurance companies will pay for you to get therapeutic services. Many will. Okay? And I want you to take advantage of that. Many of your places of employment, your human resource department, will actually pay for free sessions if you live in the US in particular. 8, 6, sometimes 10 to 12 sessions for free, not just for you, because say you have a relative who is also experiencing the grief, you might be able to get support for your family members. Okay? If all else fails, when it comes to finding a professional, my first recommendation is to find someone who's been trained as a therapist, trained in grief, if you can find that. Find someone like that to talk to. If you can't find someone who is trained, talk to your priest, talk to your pastor, find a support group. I think support groups are wonderful because you can connect to other people experiencing something similar. And from them, you might get resources that you never even thought about, or ideas about how they are coping that maybe you never considered. And what a gift. Another blessing of working with or connecting to a support group is you can buddy up, you can team up, and you know how much lighter the load feels when you know somebody's got your back and you're not the only one experiencing this horrendous event. Okay? There are a few websites I might recommend, such as Therapy for Black Women.org, Therapy for Black Men, Psychology Today is another one. And you can go to the American Psychological Association website because there's a locator on there if you're in the US for psychologists. So you can find a therapist. You can just Google looking for a therapist in my city, or therapist in my zip code. If you're in Dominica, I've got to provide resources for you too. I know we don't have many therapists on the island, but of late we've gotten a few. So I know Dr. Gina Letin. There's also Miss Massicott, who's a professional counselor that you can reach out to and get professional support. There's a difference between somebody who is just listening to you and somebody who's been trained to actively listen. And that you will find with a professional counselor. So that's my first recommendation. Find someone who's trained, who's licensed, and if they're not licensed, certified, if they're not certified, then we can start moving towards people who do support groups. Your church might have a grief support group. Participate, connect, connection, connection and support. I'm finding are powerful for me as an individual. I was thinking today that when it comes to grief, one of the most debilitating or um, negative, it's all negative, those symptoms of grief recovery and surviving grief, all of them feel yucky. But there is one that I personally find I have the most difficulty with, and that's intrusive thoughts. What's an intrusive thought? An intrusive thought is like it sounds, it's intruding. You're not wanting to think about it, but it just kind of pops in. Say, hey, here I am. So you might find yourself, you wake up and all is well. All is well. And you look at a flower, or you take you inhale a certain scent. There's a fragrance that you wear, and all of a sudden this thought of your loved one pops into your mind. And it's almost as if sometimes you start going down the rabbit hole. And even when you were feeling great, when you woke up, or in the middle of the day, you find that you're feeling good. All of a sudden you watch that little flower, and who knows, one thought peeps in, and you just can go down and down and down and down and down. Well, Some things I have personally learned as far as how to deal with that is, hey, girl, go ahead and cry. Girl, go ahead and cry. Girl, go ahead and cry. Yeah? You might have to sleep in the bed for 2 extra hours before you get up and really do the work that you know you have to do. But take care of yourself first, reset yourself first. I might go take a walk around the lake out in nature so I can just clear my head, walk barefooted on the ground, sit on a bench, hmm, talk to one of my sisters, call a friend, sometimes scroll through TikTok videos or do a Facebook live and share my experience I'm having with anybody who will listen. That's actually been one very positive, supportive uh, intervention for me, because I have felt as if I have support and other people who I can at least express the thoughts I'm feeling too. So, as we talk about that and expressing, other ways you can express your feelings are by writing. So, therapists have something we call narrative therapy. You can consider something like journaling as narrative therapy, okay, where you are just writing down your thoughts, writing down your worries, writing down your feelings about what is coming up, and this event that you have very little control over, but that you must live through and experience. Okay. I find too that mindfulness is very helpful. What is mindfulness? Mindfulness practice is about practicing being just right here, right here, right now, in a really in a determined way, so that your thoughts have less opportunity to run away with you or pull you down the rabbit hole. Because if I'm sitting and being very present to where I am, what I'll do is, hey, if I'm watching a movie, I'm now going to turn my whole focus on the movie. Hmm? Or if I'm washing dishes, I will turn my entire focus on washing the dishes, how the water feels on my hand, the shape of the plate, the color of the sponge. Very basic, 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 slower thoughts and less potent thoughts. So if I'm just describing and observing the shape of the plate, look, that's not a deep thought. You see, that's not a deep thought about, oh my, this flower reminds me of camps, huh? And look, and this trip and this that we did. So when my brain and my thoughts want to run away with me, I bring them back. Yeah, use your breath. You can use your breath to center yourself back to the present moment. Yeah, your breath. Something I do sometimes is use cold water and just ice in clinical hypnotherapy. As a clinical hypnotherapist, sometimes when we're working with a client might present experience or almost re-experience shock from a traumatic event that they experienced in the past. And ice, I've used ice in the past to help them, come back to here. Kind of like growing up, many of us grew up using smelling salts if someone fainted or if they felt weak. Hmm? When I was little too, my mom would put rock salt under our tongue. And we kind of like, okay, I'm back again. I'm here now. I'm here now. So it is about guarding mental space as about as much as you can, because again, like I say, one of the most disruptive symptoms of the grieving process for me has been intrusive thoughts. And those are thoughts, for the most part, you can't stop a thought. So what can you do with a thought? You can observe a thought. You can try your best not to resist it so much, but just sort of observe it and allow it to pass through you. Feel what you have to feel and do the little things especially to just ground you into the present moment. Yeah, ground you into the present moment. Use your senses to do that. So look around you, like I was just describing washing dishes. Look, watch the plate, observe the color of the plate, feel the water. Yeah. Listen to the sound of the water. Hmm? If you have something, like I just mentioned, salt, you can taste something or you can smell something. I have peppermint oil that I use a lot, peppermint and eucalyptus. Put a little bit in my palm of my hand, rub my hands, and I feel like my head. Yeah. Yeah, so it kind of, it's a little bit, it pulls you out of the trance. It's almost like a trance, the thoughts about grief. So a trance is where you can almost get hypnotized, right? Like you get locked in and you're just going along the flow of it. If you don't interrupt the flow, you could, and that's when you end up down the spiral. But I get it with the grief process because, especially in the beginning, there's not much you can do to a lot, these mindfulness exercises that I'm discussing and the talking to someone. In the beginning, let me tell you, it didn't matter who I was talking to. What would be the point of talking if you're crying the entire conversation? Sometimes is what I said to myself. So, life being life, you really just have to brace yourself and prepare to feel whatever it is you're going to be feeling. Feel whatever it is you're going to be feeling. Um, there does come a time when life nudges you back into, yes, but you have to do things. You have, because you have to pay bills and you have to eat and you have to take care of babies if you have babies, and you have to take care of work if you have work, and you start going through the motions of lugging yourself, at least making your body be present. Over time, you know, stuff starts falling away, falling away, falling away. But even so, there's no timetable, and these waves of grief come in at whatever time, and you have very little. I don't think you have much control over how they show up. The surviving part is about more how I can move through it. How do you move through it? And these strategies I just shared with you, like peppermint oil, bring yourself back, smelling salt, something in your mouth, mint, very sharp, minty gum, calling somebody, taking a walk, driving, things that interrupt that trance like flow of grief is how I think about it. You do the best you can because, again, like I said, sometimes it doesn't matter what you do, there's no ease up, and it eases up on its own. We are human beings having this experience everybody talks about, right? This experience called life. We are human beings, and each of us will have our own experience like that at some point because this is what we're doing here. This is what we're doing here. So, if you are in a season of your life where you are anticipating loss, you're anticipating a relationship that's going to end because, say, you and your partner have decided, no, we can't make it work, and I'm going to leave. We're having a divorce, we're getting a divorce. If you're anticipating losing someone because they have a terminal illness, I'm talking to you, okay? We do the best we can. We do the best we can. We do the best we can. So I want to thank you for showing up tonight. Tonight, I am not doing a very long session. I have talked a lot this week. I have talked a lot this week, and so tonight I offer you the best I can. Janice, how are you? I am doing well. Good night, all Jay. How are you doing? How are you doing? We have somebody who wants us to find love in the city. We appreciate them. Good night, Joy. How are you? You talk to good friends like Joy. Yes. To pay, you have to be intentional. Once you have enough, once your body allows you enough energy, because when you say you just get news of something potentially terminal for you, a family member, initially it's just shock. Initially, it really is just shock, and you're walking through life as if you're having a surreal out of body experience. Like, is this really happening? And so, but as you move through the experience, things start to clear up a bit. Hmm? And then you can kind of collect yourself and begin to become more intentional about what you do. Yeah. It on a personal level, it feels like your body is actually, like there's a wound somewhere in your body, except it's not a physical wound. So you feel the pain, but it's not, you don't have anything to show for it. So it is important to honor that, and to stay aware of that, and to nurse yourself through these experiences, to nurse yourself through these experiences, and to keep good support systems around you as you nurse these invisible wounds. Yeah, it is difficult, like Tupe says, and you have to be intentional about it, because you, at least up here, right, cognitively speaking, that that's in your best interest, and that if you take this track, you're more likely to have a positive outcome. Yeah, as opposed to if you move through the experience kind of willy-nilly. My clinical word. Yeah, willy-nilly is, I don't have a plan, I just know I'm suffering, and I don't know what to do. you know it is, I think, one of the lessons I learned after my mother was to, and I've shared this before, was to give myself a floor, a floor, a flooring, right? Like, as a, hey, do not cross this line. Do not go. If you go lower, no, you really need help here. You really need to reach out for support when you're at this point. Don't try to keep going it alone if you've hit this flooring. So if you can set up things like that for yourself, so okay, yeah, I thought I could do it without medication, but I think I need an antidepressant after 8 months of this level of suffering. Okay? So talk to other people that you know are good listeners and are there for you. If you have the money and you have insurance, find a licensed therapist. Hmm? This, you might be dealing with a medical condition, say of a child, but and I don't know that many of our MDs, like our physicians, always do an excellent job of reminding us to seek mental health support. Okay, so I haven't shared this much, but in 2010, I think, as a result of working very, just too hard in a dysregulated way, highly stressed throughout much of my 30s, I developed what's called carcinoma in situ, which is cancer forming. It's a stage zero. It's like there's a number, stage zero, right? And like the shock of it, you hear that word and you're like, oh my God, what is going on? And one of the things I remember journaling about is how I wished that the doctor who gave me the information had that day made a referral for a mental health support person, because then I would not have had to process all of that alone after the visit, right? And actually, it was a phone call. And I think many people get news like that where you're not sure what the outcome is because, hey, the outcome could be left, right, or center. And as you're moving through this tunnel of uncertainty, you start anticipating, oh my God, what if, what if, what if, what if, what if? So that's where I think a mental health support person, a therapist, psychologist, support group, whatever, is like just perfect, would be perfect when many of our doctors are sharing information with us like that. I think a referral should be made right away for a mental health therapist for people receiving news like you've got a terminal illness or you've got an illness that means a lot of navigation through losing your hair, potentially losing your breasts, losing a leg. Yeah, that's a lot to consider. And again, many people survive, but the way the mind works, it goes to every which way. And we need support through those trying times. Mhm. So if you are living through and moving through a situation of anticipatory grief, call your HR department, see if you have what are called EAP sessions available. Take advantage of those first before you start using your health insurance. If you don't have the access to that, use your health insurance. If you don't have access to insurance and you can pay out of pocket, pay out of pocket. If you cannot pay out of pocket or you don't have access to a therapist, please speak to somebody you trust who has a good listening ear, like your pastor, your priest, or somebody in your family, even who they're good like that at listening. And also consider joining a support group because a support group offers you the likelihood of sitting with, being with other people who are living through that similar experience. And that is so powerful on days when you're feeling not so strong, or on days when you're feeling or thinking like, "Ah, I must be the only one going through this." And it feels like the weight is heavier. So I think support groups are powerful. For those of you who might have gone through something uh, painful like that, consider initiating and creating a support group in your, say, your church or your community, because your experience could support so many people potentially. Because, when we team up, we get information. Somebody might say, hey, I use this doctor for that, or I use this thing right here to ease my relative's pain, as they were making it, as they were um, getting weaker and weaker towards the end. This helped my mom a lot. This helped my sister to sleep. This pillow over there, let's buy that because that one over there works really well. So that's how a support group can become very, very important as you move through anticipatory grief, as you anticipate losing a loved one, losing a pet, losing a child, losing something very valuable to you. Okay? So Winsty says, Doc, I'm in need of that help. Yes, Winsty. I hope you can find someone in Dominica to talk to because it is life changing. Therapy is life changing. Therapy is life changing. It's just a beautiful way to have what I call a meaningful conversation with somebody who's been trained to listen and help you generate solutions and explore different perspectives. And again, you heard me what I said, to help you generate solutions, to help you. All right. So your therapist is not going to tell you, this is what you must do. Boom, 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 boom. Our job is not to tell you what to do, but really essentially to help you remember what to do and to consider other things that might have worked for other people. right? Or other solutions that we know about based on research. But our primary job is to help you, yeah, process these thoughts, process these feelings, pull them apart, because these thoughts of ours, my mom used to describe, when she was trying to describe her feeling of confusion, right, with her thoughts, she would say her thoughts were like lights, like flashing lights. She would say they're like mini, 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 right? And so when that happens, we get quiet, meditate some more. It's very interesting, as I mentioned, meditation as an option for when your thoughts are just haywire, when they just leave you because you're considering every possible negative outcome in the world. It feels like your thoughts have just left your brain and gone off somewhere into the universe. Mm. One of the most efficient ways to pull them back into here, right? Where you feel like, okay, I have some sort of control or plan, or I'm not as flustered. It's the getting quiet. It's the getting quiet. It's just a paradox because in these moments, many of us become hyperactive, fidgety. It's hard to sit still. Ironically, that's what we need the most to remember and recall and pull those thoughts in. Yeah. Get deep, slow, quiet so that you can access and remember the answers. You can get more clarity. Okay? So, yes. Natalie says, thanks for the discussion tonight. Very helpful information. You are welcome. You are welcome, Natalie. And again, just to review some scenarios where you might experience anticipatory grief. We're talking about situations like somebody in your family has just been diagnosed with a terminal illness and you know they're going to die. Or they might not even be, you might not even be sure if it's going to be terminal, but the brain just does all sorts of things with you. You might become pregnant and you're not sure if you're going to keep the baby. You might get to where you realize, I cannot keep this baby. Many people have experienced, oh my God, I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to do this. What is this about? Who am I now? And what's going to happen? And trying to make sense out of all of these things. You have a pet that's getting older, has been part of your family for years and years and years. Your pet starts getting older, or it might be ill, and the vet says it won't be long now, and so you start grieving even before the event. Um, some people ask, well, is it better to have anticipatory grief versus conventional grief? Meaning, is it better for people to suffer upfront versus you have the sudden shock of a person dying on you? The research is mixed on that because people are different, you know? For some people it becomes even more complicated having to be the caregiver watching their mother die in front of their eyes versus if their mother just died. So the research is not forceful or significant on that one way or the other. Okay. As we wrap up, reach out for support. Reach out for support. Reach out for support. Okay? You don't have to do it alone. All right. Thank you all for showing up and listening. I'm Dr. Triffy. Remember, if we can try learning strategies, using tools like meditation and mindfulness, huh? And looking for evidence for some of the beliefs and the thoughts that we have. If we can change the way we think, we can influence strongly the way we feel emotionally. And we can also, as a result of that, impact what we do and the outcomes that we have. So when you're feeling very emotionally unstable, perhaps what you want to do is reverse, go back into your mind and your thoughts. What am I thinking? What are the thoughts I'm having right now? Is there evidence for what I'm thinking? Or am I worrying without proof, so to speak? Yeah? If you're worrying and you don't have proof or evidence for the thing you're worrying about, perhaps what you might do instead is to go wash your dishes and look at the color of your plate and just experience the water on your hand, right? Take some peppermint oil, focus, enjoy yourself, do something nurturing like walk around the lake, yeah, or go to the beach so you can clear your head in a different way again, so that the thoughts don't just leave you and overtake you, because they're powerful and they are intrusive. They'll show up when you don't want them to show up. So those are some things you can do to manage those thoughts that seem like they're just taking a hold of you. Nature is a big, 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 big restorer. So sitting by the beach, by the lake, yeah, talking to people who understand you. So tonight, right? Tonight I had a very lovely conversation with some very lovely ladies, and we were all sharing uh, anxious thoughts. We were sharing anxious thoughts, but just having other women, other people listen and having them verbalize that they were having similar experiences was so rewarding for me. So I feel like I had a little bit of therapy just from having other people sit and talk with me as we shared a similar experience. So that's what talking to people you trust does for you. And that's how it helps living life feel not so painful many times. Okay? So this is my offering for you tonight. Thank you, Marvlin. You are welcome. Marvlin says, thanks for sharing your expertise and your time. And Anthony, you are very welcome. Great topic tonight, Doc. Thanks for sharing your professional advice with us all. Okay, y'all. I hope you have a lovely evening. And I hope you make a lovely day tomorrow if you have the honor of waking up. Marvelyn says, I have a friend who's going through some things, and talking with her helps the both of us. Absolutely. Absolutely. If you're trying to talk to someone and the response you're getting leaves you feeling more confused or more frustrated, that might just be a signal that that might not be the best person for you to share these things with, because it's not that the person is being mean necessarily. They just might not have the listening skills that you need to support you through this experience. Okay? Good night, Wednesday. And good night, Marlon. Peace, y'all. Have a lovely night. See y'all next Thursday, 7 p.m. for Transforming Trauma podcast. All right, y'all. Bye.